Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 306, recorded live Monday, September 19th, 2016. I am your host, Todd Klindt, and I am also joined by that other guy.
Oh, you mean the glorious Shane Young, who is here to point out, guys, this is going to be a good show because Todd couldn't even count in the show 1, 2, 3 correctly, so look forward to shenanigans.
It was very complicated. I was counting numbers out loud and trying to coordinate the same number of fingers at the same time. I don't know if any of you have ever tried that, but it's like walking and chewing bubble gum. It's very complicated. It was an advanced move. I practice these things.
You weren't even trying to do, like, because, sometimes you go with the whole European 3 versus the American 3.
And so, it's funny you should say that's exactly what happened, because I went from 3, and then I was going to go to 2, but then I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. And that's exactly how I got screwed up, and then I had too many fingers. It was all very confusing.
It's like I know you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So before we get into Shane mocking me for all of my worldliness, I give a shout out to the folks at Rackspace. Go to sharepoint.rackspace.com and rackspace.com/Microsoft for all of the Microsoft stuff that we do at SharePoint. You can hit me up personally, todd.klint@rackspace.com. I'm out on Twitter at Todd Klindt, and I would be remiss if we didn't give Shane a chance to plug whatever he's doing right now.
Oh, you want me to say something nice about myself? So at Shane's Cows on Twitter, Shane.Young at boldzebras.com, right? Zebras with an S. We don't want anybody buying any socks.
Well, we do. There's nothing wrong with socks. I mean, I'm not wearing any right now, but I'm not anti-sock in general.
I'm actually a pro sock kind of guy. That's a good point. Maybe I should buy some socks. Yeah. And then there's always a YouTube channel where, been having PowerShell fun lately, so people always enjoy that. That's the whole big old Shane Young cloud shenanigans, so go find it via Twitter or something. All right.
Yeah. All right, production notes. I'm all caught up. I actually forgot to publish the blog post until today. I had it done, and so I use Windows Live Writer, and I had it up, and I just forgot to publish. I actually had what happened was I was a victim of my own success. I had it done early, and I didn't want to publish it too early, and then I just forgot about it. So, but it's all out there. We're all caught up.
I got nothing. I just got nothing.
And next week is Ignite. I'm not sure what I'm doing Monday afternoon. Shane's a big loser, and he wasn't going to go to Ignite, so I was going to make him do the podcast. But now it looks like Shane might be less of a loser and might be going to Ignite. So it's undetermined what's going to happen next week. If we're both at Ignite, we'll have to find a spot and do it. They had some kind of podcasting booth there. I told them I wanted a podcast, and I forgot to follow up with them. So I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to do it from on-site. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm sure our schedule will change about 7 times between now and then. And so, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll be here. Maybe I'll be there.
Maybe I'll be there, and you'll be here. Who knows?
Well, your wife would be happier, but that's a different story. So
as long as I'm any place but here, that's all it takes.
Yep.
All right, topics. A few good topics this week, and we've rolled a couple over from previous weeks that we wanted to talk about. The first one is something that I suffer with all the time, suffer with daily, and it's not anything about personal hygiene or anything like that. Last week, Microsoft put out a blog post called Cleaning Up the Azure AD and Microsoft Account Overlap. Now, most of you folks that are listening to this right now have like production Office 365 tenants. You've had a live ID for 100 years. You've got test tenants, things like that. And if you're like me, in the last few months, you started getting this thing where you try to log into a Microsoft service and you put in your email address and it says, hey, is this a work account? Is this a personal account? And you're left trying to figure out what the hell that question even means. And then if you pick wrong, you can't get into stuff and it gets really confusing. Show of hands in the audience, anybody who's had that problem? All right, there's a few of you. So this blog post from the Azure team talks about what causes that and how to fix it, and it is just ugly. I mean, I'm glad they posted it. It's got some good information in there, but I'm really disappointed in how Microsoft has handled this.
Yeah, well, I think they're pretty disappointed themselves in how they've handled it, right? They do a pretty good job of articulating where they've screwed up, and the fact that like MSDN still doesn't allow you to use Azure AD accounts, and so, it's a bad story. And what was really disappointing, though, kind of reading their fix to this, which you're going to kind of walk through in a minute. But what I was really hoping the answer was going to be, because I hate to admit it, as much as I curse the Googles, Google does a great job of handling multiple accounts, right? I've got like 5 Google accounts. Some are Google for work, some are Google for pleasure. I guess. And, and I can just be logged in as all of those accounts at once, and it's like, hey, no problem. And Microsoft just doesn't do that.
Yeah, and I think, and if you read through this, they've got the kind of the explanation. The reason for this is because Microsoft is trying to do a good thing. They're trying to collapse everything under one identity umbrella instead of having a pod of identity for this and a pod of identity for that. Unfortunately, they're dealing with millions and millions of users, and the number of properties that they're trying to consolidate has to be thousands, and they're just tripping all over themselves, and it is just really painful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I liked in the article, right, they talked about the whole, because of the mismatch, right, where you end up where they using your work email address to generate for pleasure accounts. But then if you lose access to your work account, aka, you get the old pink slip, then all of a sudden now you've lost your personal content as well. And it's a nasty little story. And honestly, I'm experiencing it firsthand. One of my live IDs for pleasure is it sounds so weird, is tied to my old SharePoint 911 email address, which Rackspace owns, and I don't work there, so I literally can't get into it. But so then now they have a reset option, so I've done that, but it says, yeah, okay, we'll reset, we'll help you out with that, but you're going to have to wait 30 days, because if you're a bad guy, you wouldn't wait 30 days, but if you're a good guy, you'll wait 30 days. So I don't know.
Yeah, that there is just nothing not ugly about this entire experience in this blog post. And again, kudos to them for showing us the warts and walking us through it. And some of these solutions are just horrible. I mean, it's a bad deal. But again, it's good that they were upfront and transparent about it. Gives us a fighting chance. That whole work thing, that's something that I have been militant about for a long time. I try never to use my work email address for anything that's not work. I've been laid off 2 or 3 times in the past. I know how that goes, and you never see it coming. And so you get into these things, and I've got a couple things now to get a discount with my phone. If I sign up with my Rackspace account, I get a discount through AT&T with my phone. So I have to sign in with my Rackspace account because that's how they validate it. And I'm like, man, I make the wrong person at Rackspace mad. I'm not going to be able to get to my phone, my DirecTV, all that. So yeah, that's I'm glad they brought that up in this article. So if you're having that thing where you get, it looks like, Todd at whatever is more than one type of account, read this article. It's on the blogs.microsoft.com, Enterprise Mobility. It's a good read, if nothing else, just to see how they've screwed up and how they're trying to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, and on a completely unrelated side note there, though, we should talk about that because my AT&T account, I was able to get the discount and use a different email address, so I did not lose access to my phone when I was moved on to greener pastures.
You and I should chat after the show then. That would be outstanding. I would love to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've realized now that I've exposed that I'm waiting on my Shane at SharePoint 911 to get reset through Microsoft. You or Jason could definitely hop in there and take that, or Jerry. So, at least when it gets hijacked, I know that one of you guys has been like, hey, IT, I need to be Shane at SharePoint 911 for a while. So looking forward to that.
That's good fun. Yeah, I would have never thought of that, but yeah, thanks for the idea. That's good stuff.
I'm here for you. I mean, I think Jason's in the chat room, so I'm assuming he's nervous.
Well, he's not anymore. Now he's up at the IT desk now, trying to get his email address changed.
Yeah. Oh, Jerry's in the chat room too. I see him about to chime in. This is getting bad for me.
They're both gonna be throwing elbows trying to get that email address.
Yeah, that's what's gonna save it, right? Is IT's gonna be like, wait a minute, why are you both fighting for this guy's address? So.
Oh, that's fun stuff.
All right.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is something that you and I have talked about in many sessions, Jason and I are talking about it at Ignite, but something that I have not, I don't think, posted about lately, and this is the hardware and software limitations for SharePoint 2016. So we've seen this article for SharePoint 2010, SharePoint 2013. I don't know how many times I've linked to the SharePoint 2013 version of it, but they have a 2016 version of it. So hardware and software boundaries for SharePoint 2016. This one was the reason I found myself looking for this one. Jason and I are doing a session at Ignite on sizing and all that kind of stuff, and we were curious about the content database, supported content database sizes. Now, you and I back in the day, you know, we've seen SharePoint back in the day when if you had a database bigger than 20 or 30 gig, you were living on borrowed time. For a while, that number was 100 gig, and then for a while it was 200 gig. And Jason and I wanted to know what the official company line was on that. Have you read this? Do you know what the answer is?
Well, it depends. There's either 200 gig answer for things you actually want to use, and it's 4 terabytes for things that you just want to keep in the ether. I can't imagine that'll ever work, but they're there.
Sort of. You're very close. So now, instead of having a single line for supported content database, they have 3. So the first one, you're right, is 200 gig, and that's basically the supported limit for not paying attention to it. I can't remember how they word it in the document, but it's 200 gig, and they guarantee everything will just be fine, and daisies and bouncing kittens and all that kind of stuff. The second, that's Shane's impression of a bouncing kitten. The second limit is 4 terabytes, and that also is full fidelity. Everything will still work. Everything's still supported at 4 terabytes. And in the past, you and I have talked about with people like, well, if you're using workflows or whatever, you don't want to get these big database sizes. All of that is supported with 4 terabytes. That's answer number 2. Answer number 3 is there is no limit. And that's that whole document archiving, just throwing things out and all that. So there are 3 answers to that question. What are the supported database sizes?
It just makes me want to cry on the inside. Right? I mean, I still remember. You remember back in 2007, we met the guy that had the 2 terabytes of content. It was an oil company, and we're like, yeah, that just doesn't work, dude. I mean, I realize you have it working, but it doesn't actually work.
Yeah, and there are so many considerations besides does the page come up? So many considerations besides, hey, I uploaded a document, it was just fine. Backup and restore times and testing. So Jason and I are also doing a session at Ignite on upgrade. How do you upgrade when you can't move your content database to your testing environment because you don't have 4 terabytes plus log space free? And so there's just so many things to consider when you're looking at your database sizes.
Yeah, it's even simpler things. People get themselves in trouble with PowerShell, right? Looping through get SP site, get SP web. If you got 4 terabytes of content, you're gonna blow some stuff up. So, I don't know. I got PowerShell in the mind. It's all I've been playing with all week. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that number is marketing. It's Microsoft for a decade, probably, without exaggeration, getting its nose bloodied on these database limits. And people saying, well, you can't use SharePoint. It's got a 100 gigabyte database limit. You can't take that seriously. So, somebody up on high, Jeff Teeper, Steve Ballmer, somebody came back to the SharePoint team and said, you need to make this limitation go away. You need to not let people say this about SharePoint. And I think that's kind of how we got where we're at today. And they made some good limits. I remember with SharePoint 2003, I took our entire farm down by deleting a site collection. Because we had one content database, and back in those days when you deleted a site collection, it did it all in one fell swoop, and it was a big site collection with a lot of documents in it. And back in that day, big was probably 7 or 8 gig. But I did a STS-ADM-O delete site, and it started walking through that content database, and SQL went, I can't delete all this at once. Locked that database, the whole farm dropped from deleting a site collection. Can't do that now. It does it in batches, but
those SQL lock issues, man, no one ever knew what was happening when it happened, but they'd call someone like us and we're like, yep, I know exactly what's happening. Nothing's broke. It's all working as designed. You just don't like the way it was designed.
Well, and that's the thing. Some of these design problems have gotten fixed because of the criticism Microsoft gets about this being a bad limitation.
So speaking of them having to fix that for the nose blooding, you got to wonder when they're going to have to break down and fix the, rewrite SQL, right? So they can have larger than 2 gig file sizes, because that's another one of those nose bloodies that
I have heard from some of my SQL buddies that has actually been fixed. So, and I can't remember who I talked to about this. Somebody way smarter than me, which I realize that doesn't narrow it down a lot. But the 2 gig file size limit was a 32-bit limit, and with SQL being 64-bit everywhere, that has essentially been fixed. But SQL is a big enough product that they're not sure if there's any 32-bitedness hidden anywhere inside of any of the tooling. And so that's why nobody wants to come out and say, it's fine, Blob's bigger than 2 gig. We promise nothing will break, because there's some tool somewhere, like SQL Management Studio is a 32-bit app, or at least it was the last time I checked. So that's what it is. The database engine itself can handle it and all that. It's just all the other ancillary stuff.
That darn bitedness, it gets you every time.
Bitedness. Yeah, darn bitedness. But anyway, so for those of you looking at 2016, that's a great document to have. But that brought up, so the answer to this question, how big can a content database be, reminded me of an article I read a couple of weeks ago on Business Insider called, "There's an Easy Way to Tell If You're Talking to an Expert or a Faker." And basically what this article comes down to, and I think like everything else on the internet, it would be better if it had pictures of cats, and it oversimplifies things. But it brings home a good message. The message of this is, the way you can tell if you're talking to a faker as opposed to an expert is fakers speak in absolutes. Fakers don't know the background of something enough that they can speak in absolutes. Oh, yes, this will always work. Oh, yeah, that's very easy. All these very grand absolute things. Whereas experts have seen so much and understand things so deeply that every answer to every question becomes like a fight, because in their head they're seeing all the different permutations, and it's just impossible to nail them down on anything. Not because they're punks, but because they're experts.
And so, because I read the article also, and while I agree with this from a scientific point of view, it has some shortcomings, I think, when we get into the business space, and more specifically for me, consulting. I just think that when it comes to consultants, you don't want, right? In the example he uses, the guy's talking about whether or not 20th century England was resilient, and the world's foremost expert, right, says, well, maybe, kind of, you could maybe extrapolate that it is, very, very vague, showing his expertise, which completely get, because like you said, he understands all the nuances of where he could be proven wrong. But at the same time, if you're brought in to be a consultant, right, if you're brought in to be a consultant and say, hey, how should I install SharePoint? Here's my requirements. They don't want to hear from you. Well, you could probably do this or that, right? They look at that as you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yep.
They look at it. They want to hear from you, the expert. You must do it this way. So,
yep.
I don't know.
So that's a very good thing. So I sent this off to a bunch of other friends, and we had discussions about this, and that exact criticism came up. And what it basically came down to was that as an expert, you should be able to come up with the concrete answer, but in most cases, it's not to the initial question. So the initial question is, how big should I let my content database be? The faker is going to say 200 gig or less. The expert's going to go, well, and this is where we get in this whole thing, and it's almost like cliche now. It depends. And why do we answer things with it depends? It's because we're experts, and we know that there's not one answer. But what me and my other buddies came up with was, what we're not going to be able to find is the answer to the global question, how big should a content database be? What our jobs as experts are is to get that question, that initial question, and say, tell me more about what you're trying to do. How are you going to use this database? What do you plan on doing in 5 years? And make it a conversation. Then when you get enough information and you've looked at all these nuances, then give the concrete answer. And then say, 300 gig, you can get by with 4 terabyte. Here are the things to look out for. And you can give a good answer. One of the guys mentioned that he really hated the phrase, it depends, not because it depended, because it always does, but it ends up putting you at like an adversarial level with the person asking the question. And you don't want to do that, because what you want is you just want to get more information so you can give a better answer. But depending on how you phrase that question, it feels like you're kind of fighting each other. So I like your response, not because you made it, but because this other guy that I respect more than you kind of said the same thing.
I'm glad we cleared that up. Yeah, I mean, whoever said it, though, is absolutely right. When you reply with "it depends," people just immediately shut down, right? They do not want to hear that as a response. But then, the other scenario, and I realize we're probably not supposed to spend this much time here, but we are anyway, is, it's one of the things that I found myself doing back in the day, right? Was I would give those type of answers around, how big should it be? Well, it should be 50 gigs. And right. And so I gave that specific answer hoping for them to then engage and do a pushback, right? Because 50 gigs was my safe answer. I could never be wrong if you follow that advice, right? It was the no effort answer back in the day. And if they said, oh, wait a minute, 50 gigs is way too small, I could never do that, we say, okay, well then, and now we could go and engage that conversation. So I used the faker answer to drive the expert decision, or for the people who didn't want to have the conversation, they just wanted a generic answer. 50 gigs was a generic answer. So I guess that's one of the things about the article, right? The article makes it very black and white. I think the guy even kind of alludes to it a little bit, right? The article tries to make it all very black and white. In reality, it depends on how you determine the difference as well.
You are an idiot. You are not an expert on this with your answer. No, it was a good discussion. And like I said, like most things on the internet, it was oversimplified and clickbait and all that. But it did help me, having that discussion with the other guy, help me understand how to come at that questioning better. And again, you and I would do the same thing. We would, when somebody would ask us that question, we would gauge their level of expertise and what they were going to do. And sometimes 100 gig is just the right answer. And they're like, oh, thank God, that's all I needed. And they were going to go back and set up a SharePoint farm that was going to have 2 servers, and at the biggest ever was going to have 27 gig of content. And all they knew was that they were under the 100 gig umbrella, and they were fine. And so for that situation, the answer is probably right.
Yep. We know, and I hate to compliment you, so especially on something that's being recorded, but this was one of the problems that we really had with you when we first brought you into the consulting world. Right, is we would set you out. Now I'm getting into your HR file here. We would put you in front of customers, and you would never want to give concrete answers, right? Because you were an expert on things, and so a customer would poke you for something, and you would always just kind of like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to engage with that, because you knew there was all these variables, and you knew that there were things you hadn't tried and done and tested, and you weren't 100% on it. And we had to kind of beat that consultant mentality into you that you had to kind of puff your chest up a little bit and be like, hey, I got this, no problem. So
yeah, and that was another thing in the conversation we had. They mentioned that experts tend to not want to get nailed down to something because they never want to be proven wrong. And so, yeah, it's all about the delivery. It's all about saying, I think this is the right answer. We can look into it. Yeah, that's very valid as well.
Yeah, so there you go. Psychology 101 covered on the show.
There you go. So we got a couple of things. So the September patches came out last week. I for sure have upgraded the SharePoint 2016 page, toddklindt.com/SP2016 builds. I think I forgot to do the 2013 one, so I will do that tonight or tomorrow. I've started adding, Jeff Jones does a what's in this patch thing. I've started adding that to the links on the pages. I'll probably keep doing that. You did some videos that had installation. If you keep doing those, let me know. I will add those. For those of you out in radio land, if that kind of stuff is helpful, if there's anything else that I can add to those pages, give me a shout and I will do that.
I can confirm you did not do the 2013 because the whole reason I put it in the notes was to bust your butt about it, and you went ahead and busted yourself. So it's very sad for me.
I busted my own butt. The reason for that is I redid how the back end. Speaking of busting my butt, redid the back end of the patch thing, and for 2016, it's just a big XML file. So it takes me 5 minutes maybe to update everything. And for 2013, that blog post is there and it's so huge and monolithic, and I need to move it over to something better, and I just haven't done that yet. But then it'll be just as easy to update.
Yeah, well, so getting the install videos up is on the agenda for the week, so absolutely. Okay. And then Kyle there asked, for the 2016, you haven't had any bugs and that type of stuff, the bugs and regressions and things. So
yeah, so part of that XML file is the page to the patch notes, and I just haven't gotten much feedback. I mean, I've installed them and nothing really big has been broken. There are a couple that there are notes that are going to come out with functionality that's been added. Yeah, I just need to create those pages. And that's the thing. So if I don't create that page, updating that XML file is simple. If I do, then I need to create that page and put the framework out there and all that.
Yeah. Well, and I think this goes back to, we talked about it probably a month ago, right? Is sometimes it feels like no one's actually doing 2016 in production yet because we're not seeing the bugs and the notes and that type of stuff. And we used to wait, but now I'm like, I'm just going to put the patch on because it might be 6 months before I find out if anything's broken it or not.
Yeah, that's I've talked to some other people, and I've not gotten a good concrete feel for how many folks are really installing 2016 out in production. And if they are, if they've just left it to RTM, and that's good enough. Yeah, so maybe that's something that I should do at Ignite next week. And if you're there, we'll do it too. We'll just go around and start interviewing people, to start asking them, hey, are you putting 2016 on? Yes, no. Just kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the install video for 2016, it has picked up a little traction. So I don't know if this means that we're finally getting people over the hump a little bit, but I mean, I have seen that the uptake on the watching has been growing a little bit. So maybe people are slowly getting there. I don't know. It'd be great to ask people, like you said, next week.
Yeah, we'll do that. So you had a script. So you wanted to talk about Russ Maxwell's script. You've had that in the notes for like a month now.
Well, it seemed reasonable since the guy was nice enough to put it out there. But so one of the things I ran into when I was putting the August 2016 patch on SharePoint Server 2013, that's not confusing at all, was my install ended up taking hours, right? On the farm that had no content, no users, no nothing. It took hours and hours and hours. And so I went and looked through the logs. I'm like, well, it's just fighting with itself. It was just internally, you can see in the logs, it was just bickering. Search is starting, search is stopping. The timer search is starting. It was back and forth, back and forth. So I did a little binging because I do not use Google. I use Bing. And my binging found a guy named Russ Maxwell had a script out there that allows you, essentially you run it before you do the install, and it stops all the services for you. So it stops the timer service and the search service, and it sets them all so they can't move on, or they can't restart themselves automatically. Then it does the patching, and then it restarts them all for you. And it took my time from, the 3 hours it took me back to the 10 or 15 minutes it was supposed to take. So really a big fan of Russ's script, and 2013 patching absolutely needs it.
Yeah, and so I mentioned him already once. Jeff Jones has a similar script that he uses, and I haven't used that. I've used Russ's 1,000 times. Jeff's I've not used as much, but I need to try that out. Maybe we'll get Jeff on here and have him talk about that. But it's the same, scratches that same itch that there are some ways to more efficiently patch SharePoint without having these hours and hours of downtime.
Yeah, and I did. I haven't ran into the problem at all with 2016 yet, so hopefully that's a good sign that whatever that weirdness is, they fixed it with 2016. It's one of the 3 changes they made. And then there is I do have one of the August 2016 CU video shows using that script, so if you're a little nervous about how it works or just want to watch step by step, I did cover that as well.
Yeah, I've used Russ Maxwell's script countless times. I've never had an issue. Like you said, all it does is just stop and start search and some other things. And if everything goes haywire, you just reboot everything, and it's fine.
Magic happens, yeah.
I've never had a problem. One other thing that's been in the notes for a while is Stefan Gossner. If you've not followed his blog, he is a senior escalation engineer for SharePoint. He's one of the guys that blogs every time a patch comes out, things like that. And he put out a blog post about a month ago called "SharePoint does not have a build version, full stop." It always cracks me up when somebody says something like full stop and then puts 4 pages of text afterwards. It feels like that was not as full of a stop as they had led me to believe it would be. But basically talks about something that has been evolving inside of SharePoint. Back in SharePoint 2007, there was a build version. There was one. That was it. There was no other way to find any of the numbers. And then as we've gotten newer versions of SharePoint, and they've done a good job breaking things up, now with 2016, that farm build number is almost meaningless. And so Stefan's blog post talks about that, and it breaks it down really well as to what each number means. On my SharePoint 2013 and 2016 blog post, I talk about how you can figure out which patches are installed. He kind of breaks down all those different versions and says, here's what this number really means. It doesn't mean farm, it means this particular thing, and whether it's any good or not. So good thing to read.
Yeah, and he says that the way Todd does it is wrong, so that's even the best part of reading it all.
Does he call me out specifically?
I think he does. I think he says Todd Klindt moron, but I don't know.
Well, certainly he feels that way, but I couldn't.
Maybe that was my special Chrome filter that was running there. I don't know.
It inserts that into every page. So that's good stuff. And another thing is part of what they've done with patching with 2016 is we're looking at another kind of terminology shift. They're kind of getting away from calling them CUs, and now they're going to be patches or PUs, public updates. It's really unfortunate that PU is, so you may see some weird terminology changes on my blog and all that, but it's just because I'm trying to align myself with the folks at Microsoft.
Good old Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah. All right. So we're already a minute over, but let's quickly go through the shameless self-promotion. The first thing is 1 week from right now, I'm going to be in Atlanta for Ignite, ignite.microsoft.com. Hopefully we're going to get Shane down there. I'm going to be doing a pre-day session on Sunday. I'm doing the upgrade and migration one, pre-day session number 16. And then I'm going to be doing a 75-minute upgrade session with Jason Himmelstein and a topology and installation and things like that. Also be at the Rackspace booth. I'll be at the SharePoint Microsoft booth. I'll be at all the parties, all that kind of stuff. So come find me if you're going to be in town at Ignite. Still looking at doing like a breakfast or something. Got to figure out schedule-wise. I was going to look at my schedule today and figure that out, and it kind of crapped out on me. Hopefully Shane will be there.
Yeah, make sure if you do the breakfast, maybe say we'll put it in the Slack channel as well as tweet it type of thing, kind of hit a couple of different places for people to find it.
Yeah, and I blogged what I'm going to be doing at Ignite, and I'll add it there as well. And then at the end of next month, my European tour kicks off. I'm going to SharePoint Days in Slovenia. That is October 25th and 26th. I'll be doing the Azure AD session and my upgrade session. I'll be there. That's in Lake Bled, Slovenia. And then jetting off from there and heading directly up to the IT Unity SharePoint Exchange Forum in Stockholm. That's October 27th and 28th. And that is same sessions, Azure AD and upgrades. So I will have them well honed by then.
Of course, it'll be in the wrong language, so no one will know what's going on, but you will have them.
Hopefully I will look smarter as I have run my sessions through Google Translate and spit them out into Swedish and Slovene.
I would pay money for you to do that. And
so one of the funny things, and I will make this mistake now, is the Swedish word for thank you is tack. And whenever I go someplace where English is not the primary language, I try to learn please, thank you, hello, goodbye, all those formalities, things like that. And so in Swedish, it's tack. And I put it at the end of a slide. I had a slide that said thank you, and so I replaced it with tack, trying to suck up to the audience. Apparently the word for roof is also tack, and I spelled it wrong. So instead of saying thank you at the end of my slide deck, I said roof. And, so of course I go to that slide and I don't know that, and everybody laughs, and I think they're laughing with me that I'd done that, and no, they were all laughing at me. And to this day, I can't remember which spelling is which, so I just don't put it up there anymore.
Yeah, and you could have done, you see this guy save it. You got to be talk, right? Roof, like the dog, or you could be like, raise the talk.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, gosh.
Yep, that's me. Roof.
Roofeed, but that would be something different.
Something different.
Yep.
All right, we got to get Lori out of here. So I'll let you guys know on Twitter, whatever what we're doing next week for the podcast. Depends on where Shane's at. It's all about Shane.
Story of my life. Speaking of that, go to Bold Zebras, SharePoint, Azure Consulting. Always happy to help you guys.
All right, talk to you guys later. Chat room, I'll stick around for a while. Thanks, and I'll see you next week or the week after.